This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone. Again, Erev Shabbos Rabbi Glatstein, as we're enjoying the wonderful weather here in New York City. Sheleg Gadol V'Kar Yihia, since Parshas Vayigash and the Pri Megadim's promise. It's been cold, it's been snowy. If only the Pri Megadim would have predicted, Kesef coming down in Hashemayim, I think people would have been much happier. But snow is also good. After all, everything is a chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. David HaMelech says, Noisein sheleg katzamer kefar ka'efer yifazer. Okay, Marv Rabbi Glatstein, let's speak a little bit about Parshas Shemos, and an interesting subject that comes up from Parshas Shemos. It's the first time a leader of Klal Yisrael is appointed, and Moshe Rabbeinu is selected as the manhig of Klal Yisrael. So it's a good time to speak about the following topic. The Abarbanel said that he came to Italy and he sees a new phenomenon. He says, what are these rabbis? Rabbis? What are they? What are rabbis? Like, what do they do? What are they supposed to do? There's like Jews and Torah, and okay, you have a Rebbe, but like, who's the guy in the shul? He's not a Rebbe. Well, because he says a 10-minute drasha in the middle of davening, all of a sudden you become a Rebbe. Well, what are rabbi? What's the role of a rabbi? And the Abarbanel said, the whole concept of calling someone rabbi, it's non-Jewish influence. They have their doctorinen, they have their doctors, so we want to create a position to mimic them. But the position of Rav has always been a position in Klal Yisrael. And the question is, so what is the job? What is the job description of a Rav? What is the responsibility of a Rav? Is a Rav somebody who teaches Torah? Is a Rav somebody who helps people with various personal issues? Is a Rav somebody who answers shilas? Is it all of the above, none of the above? What is the job description of Rav? Is it just an invention? Or it used to be people knew halacha, but when people didn't know halacha, they needed somebody, so they Rav. It used to be people were normal. Now that people are meshuganas and they need a Rav. It used to be that people, in other words, is it just something that developed over time, or is there really such a position? And what is the main job of a Rav? How do we know if the Rav is doing his job? Who decides on that? So let's delve into this subject. So we begin with interesting comment of Moshe Sternbuch, who I think the Abezin of the Eideh Charedis, he's author of Shas Tshuvas V'Hanhagos in Chelik Beis, Siman Tavshin Chaf Beis, and he's discussing the issue of whether it's permitted to fire a Rav. So here you have a nice Rav. He says a nice Shiur on Chumash, and he says a nice Shiur Gemara Rashi Tosfos. But then a younger guy comes in. He could say a better Chumash Shiur. He could say a more Lamdash Gemara Shiur. He's better. Nothing wrong with the old Rav. We want a new Rav. The same thing with your car. You don't buy a car anymore. You lease it. Why? Because after 1 year you get sick and tired of the car. You want a car that not only could make coffee for you and pour it into your mouth while you're driving, and if it spills, it's going to stick an arm out and wipe your mouth. That's what you want. The old car is not good enough. You want a car that's going to have a GPS to find the nearest parking spot, right? You want a car that could shovel out the snow before you get to the spot. So you're tired of the old car, so I'm tired of the old Rav. When could you get rid of the Rav? So the Rav Sternbuch says, well, it depends. Depends what a Rav is. He says a Rav is supposed to be primarily a Talmid Chacham and somebody who is knowledgeable in Torah. If that's the case, you can't get rid of him just because you find somebody who knows more. Yeah, but the old Rav is outdated. No, you can't get rid of him unless he doesn't do his job. However, says Rav Sternbuch, unfortunately, the role of rabbi these days has been reduced from what used to be Talmid Chacham to social director. Nowadays, what does a rabbi become? Rabbis become somebody who could get up at the dinner and smile nicely with white teeth and present it to some award for being the chief president of the sisterhood. That's what the rabbis become, right? Or the rabbi is somebody who could conduct a really dynamic hakamas matzeva. Or a rabbi who knows how to dig dirt to bury somebody well. Or a rabbi is somebody who knows how to give a good hesped. So nowadays that rabbis become a social director, so the people don't like him, they're allowed to get rid of him. If the role of Rav was Talmid Chacham, can't get rid of him. If the role of Rav is social director, so it depends if the people like him or not. It used to be there was once a Rav who was a terrific speaker if he prepared. But if he didn't prepare, like 10 years in advance, forget it. Guy couldn't, he garbled and marbled. So it was very convenient. He would check people out. He would figure out, the wife is expecting, so he'd prepare a drasha both for a boy or a girl. This guy is, his kid is 3 years old. He'd prepare the bar mitzvah speech. The guy's 15. He'd already prepare the offer of drasha. He had everything made. The problem is, what do you do with hespedim? Because, sometimes you have advance warning. The guy says, Rav, I'm going to tell you I have 2 years to go. But what do you do now? So the Rav was a smart guy. He prepared all the hespedim in advance for everyone in the kehillah. He already had it in the file cabinet, alphabetical order of hespedim for everyone in the kehillah. Problem is, there was a big hurricane, and a wind came and blew the file cabinet into the street, and all the hespedim of everyone in the city went flying in the street, and people picked up and says, we've gathered here today to eulogize Yankel ben Pliny. And he said, I'm Yankel ben Pliny. And sure enough, the Rav had to find a different city to officiate in. But by the way, it's not a true story. But
the Rav always says, when you have, let's say, a gangster, a bad Jew, what can he say at the hesped? He loved his mother.
But his mother did not love him, right? But anyway, so Rav Sternbuch observes the fact that the role of rabbi today has been greatly reduced. This is a rabbi that the yoke of psak is on his shoulders. In other words, the main job of a rav, the traditional job of the rav, is to paskin shilas and to teach Torah l'rabim. Rabban and Kanva in America, the rabbi, ikar tavkidim rak lidrosh b'halavayas. The main job of the rabbi is to bury you. Chasana is to darshan under the chuppah, bar mitzvah. And sometimes on Shabbos and Yom Tov, he'll have to tie. How do you tie together Tisha B'Av, Afrov, Chasana, Levaya, if someone is born? And the Rav says it's all the same, that for this guy to get married to this woman, it's Takalaika Levaya, right? The Rav has all kinds of ways to tie all the Simchas together and the Levayas together. That's the main job of the Rav, to say, Baba Maisas, politics. Why did Hashem make Rubashkin come out the same day that Trump to recognize Israel, and the rabbi makes a Baba Maisa Shein Kamayu, like he knows Darkei Hashem, why it happened the same time. So it's a joke, and therefore says the Rav Sternbuch, the job of a Rav today is not the traditional job, or at least it has not been reduced that way. It has been reduced to not be that way. But Av Bezin Shesach in Moridin Oisai, the halacha is really an Av Bezin that makes a mistake, you can't demote him. That's an Av Bezin that has the oil of Hira. But these Rabbanim, they're not called Rabbanim, they're called rabbis. Shehem rak oivdei tzibur, they're basically public servants to speak. If the people don't like him, in other words, they only hired him because his teeth were white, but now his teeth are a little bit more yellow and he doesn't look as good in the pictures. And so then you get rid of him. Nowadays, rabbis are not kavod Torah because they're not servicing as Talmid Chachamim, and the tzibur doesn't even want a Talmid Chacham, they want rabbi. So therefore the whole job description has changed. But again, this is what is the unfortunate situation in some places. But let's try to analyze what is the traditional job description of a rabbi. What should be his job? How should he occupy himself?
You become a rabbi when you get smicha.
Which is also some of the biggest Talmid Chacham and Poskim in the previous generation did not have smicha. They did not have a smicha party, right, with balloons and a video with people talking about him after, because he learned Yeridea for 3 years. These persons, they actually know Yeridea, Well, because he didn't study the 100 questions that they might ask you on the test. He actually knows the material.
It says, the fact that
he could.
It doesn't say in the Gemara, if everybody loves the rabbi, he's doing something wrong.
No, there's a famous quip from the Rabbi Salanter that a rabbi that everyone likes is not a rabbi, and a rabbi who they kick out of town is not a man, right? A rabbi they don't want to throw out of town is not a rabbi, and a rabbi they do throw out of town is not a man. It's not a Gemara, but it's a saying. Fine. So let's look. What is the job description? So says the Beis Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak Shmelkish, one of the Gedolei HaPoskim, the Achronim. He writes in the end of Chelik Aleph of Arachayim in something called Salois Habayis Siman Daled V'Nirali Lefaresh. Acharei asher nischaka mikoidem el toyelas harav be'iroi, after it is has been engraved, and we've already written the benefit of a rav in a city, and the obligation of him lashkiach al bnei adasai ka'asher afapenu meisharim, as our eyes see. Chazu, as our eyes see, he's writing about the great Goyin Rabbi Yosef Shal Natanzan. V'ra'inu hatayelas of neidorai nechlika ba'arba panim. It's divided in 4 ways. In other words, says Rabbi Yitzchak Shmakish, we could divide the obligation and the responsibility of a Rav in 4 ways. Based on, in other words, he wants to do this in a logical way. You want to know what a Rav has to do? Let's figure out what does a Yid have to do? What are the main obligations of any Yid? And then the Rav will be sort of mashgiach over those 4 inyanim. In other words, if you want to know what's the job of a Rav, first define what does a Yid have to do. And whatever a Yid has to do, the Rav is mashgiach over those chayvos. Number 1, ha'echad, lo moy Torah, ulahav shem nashe b'limod, v'das Torah k'dosha, lo moy olalam in l'shem v'lasais. Meaning, what's the number 1 responsibility of a Jew? Number 1 responsibility of a Jew is to learn, and to learn, to teach, and to observe. Well, if that's the case, since Roiv Anoshim Trudim Akosha Tzrachim, since most people are busy making a living, the main job of a Rav is to make sure that people learn and observe the Derech Eretz and observe Musar. Like Chazal say, Vayakel Moshe, Leich Kihilois Barabim V'Droishem Hilchoshaz V'Shaz Hilchab V'Chag V'Amr Chazal Sanen Shalik Tes Amr Shakish Kamalamed Es Ben Chaverim Malav Kasuk Lasoi. Someone who teaches the son of his friend, it's like you made him. Lez Amr Kilo Asoi L'Divrei Torah. It's like you made the Torah. Amr Kilo Asoi La'atzmai. So you know Rava Hoisif. Rava adds Alam Rama Kadim Hashem Ki Or Halimud. The light of Lim Shemalamed Es Ben Chaverim Choizer Alav Ba'atzmai. Meaning the light of teaching someone else returns to you. So that's the first responsibility of a Rav. Since the main responsibility of a Yid is to learn, the job of the Rav is to ensure that people are learning. In other words, if you go to a shul, it has 1,000 members, wow, and is there learning going on in the shul? No, but there's a lot of, it's a very active shul. It's very active. Okay, but people learn. Bama, people learning. No.
In the morning and no one in the evening. It's
not a. No. So then it's not. Then the rabbi is not fulfilling his responsibility. It's not about gathering members. It's about people learning. That's number 1 responsibility. Number 2, hatel zabeis yesh merav, v'hasher hu choiv kadosh lahashlich nafsha mineged b'davar hanageh liyisoid hadas. And that is, if the halacha is being trampled on, or if the halacha is being people are being lax, the rabbi has to be moiser nefesh to uphold it. Like Chazal saying, Harav doim elamal Hashem tzavakos yivakshu Torah mipiv ki yedude eish yismalton. Chazal say that Rishonim, why did Nisim happen to them? Because Chazal say they were moiser nefesh HaKadosh Hashem, they were moiser nefesh to uphold the law. And Chazal say in the Yalkut, Amr of Nasim, like halach yoyne elo la'abed atzmai liyam. Yoyne was going to commit suicide. Shenamar sa'uni v'hashichuni. It should say v'hatiluni alayam v'chein atamaytzu ba'avos and aviyim, that they gave up their nefesh for Klal Yisrael. Like the Moshe said, Im kach ata oisali hargeni. David said, Hinei anoichi chatasi. But what did the Jews do? So it sounds like 2 things. First of all, the manik has to be willing to be moiser nefesh to uphold the halacha, and he has to be moiser nefesh to protect the people, to stand up even to the Rebbeinu Shalom to protect the people. Number 3, ready? Number 3 is hu asher yashkiach al aniyim v'dalim l'tamcham u'lesadam l'rosh b'nei dora yimotu mitzaris nefashos avyonim hananacham hananacham. The poor, the downtrodden, the unfortunate, the despondent, the people lacking. The job of the Rav is to provide for them, to support them, to encourage them, to help the unfortunate. That is the third responsibility of the Rav. Number 4, Hane'enachim, that are moaning and groaning. Avyonim ha b'machan. I read it Hane'enachim. I'm not sure. Number 4, the fourth tayalas is, that is on the Rav's shoulders, is to inspire the people in Yiras Hashem and Avas Hashem, in every action, in every word. Like Chazal say, B'shoshem achnisin adam ladin. They ask them, did you deal in business honestly? Did you set times to learn Torah? But nevertheless, if your Shamayim is the storehouse, then you're okay. So again, this would be the traditional job description of rabbi. That is, number 1, to teach Torah. Number 2, to be moiser nefesh for the halacha and for the welfare of the kehillah. Number 3, to stand up and encourage the unfortunate. And number 4, to inspire the people in Yiras Shamayim. Again, the reason why I want to speak about this is, people have their own ideas. So, what's the job of Rav? So let's see. What do the Makairoi say? What do Chazal say? What do the Achronim say? Here, the Rav Sternbach quotes Rav Chaim Ozer Grzinski. What is the job description of rabbi? He says, Be'inyan chayvas Rav ve'iroi. Rav Chaim Ozer of Vilna would say, the Rav has 3 jobs, and one of them is not really so applicable anymore. Number 1, lelamdem Torah, to teach. L'hayrasam derech Hashem halacha l'maisa, to teach Torah and halacha. Number 2, which nowadays everything is decompartmentalized. Number 2, lesader talmidei Torah, meaning to make yeshivas, right? Talmud Torah, shchita. Mehudaras, good shchita, Eruv, mikvah. But that, you already have, every city has its own branches to take care of these various institutions. And the third thing is, lidog la'aniyim yisayim ha'amanis b'kilasa, to be concerned for the unfortunate and the despondent. So there's a famous story, and I've heard the story quoted many times. I've heard many gedolim get thrown into the story. Let me tell you the legend of the story, and then let's see how it really happened. And we'll learn a specific nakuda, and it goes like this. Supposedly, this is a question that always intrigued people. What's the job of the rabbi? Because after all, the main topic of discussion that people want to know is, how much does the rabbi get paid? Right? That's it's everybody's business how much the rabbi gets paid, and therefore, once we know how much he gets, we could decide whether he deserves it or not, and if he's doing his job, right? So supposedly the question was raised: what is the main job of the Rav? So they brought the question to Rabbi Yitzchak Chanan Spector, and Rabbi Yitzchak Chanan Spector said the main job of the Rav is to teach Torah. And then they brought the question to the Aruch HaShulchan, Rabbi Chiel Epstein, author of Aruch HaShulchan. He said, main job of the Rav is to paskin shailas, is to beheter tamei v'dar. And then they came to Reb Chaim Brisker. Now they threw other gedolim into the story as well. One time they threw Reb Itzla Panovitcher into the story, and he said to give lam to Shiurim. And they threw Reb Itzla Petterberg into the story. What happened was, probably none of them were in the story, but they mixed up Reb Yitzchak with an Itzla, and once you put in one Itzla, every gadol whose name was Itzla got thrown to the They threw in Reb Itzla Petterberg, so Reb Itzla Petterberg said, to me, my chiach, the people. I doubt that's what he said, and I doubt they even asked him. And then they asked Reb Chaim Brisker. Reb Chaim Brisker said, to teach Torah? What are you talking about? Every Yid has to teach Torah. So, every Jew has to teach Torah. To paskin shilas? Every Jew needs to know how to paskin. Otherwise, how you take a pair of socks out on Shabbos, you don't know how to paskin. The job of the Rav is to do chesed. The job of the Rav is to help out the Yisoimim, the Amanos, the Aniyim, the Zakenim, the Cholei Aguf, the Nefesh, the Imlolei Ruach. Question is, did this story ever happen? Is this really what Reb Chaim said? So, this is the story that probably happened. The story, who asked the question? The Nitziv had a son Who's a Nitziv's son? Nitziv's name was Naftali, Tzvi, Yehuda, Berlin. He had a son, Meir. Meir Berlin, otherwise known as Meir Bar Ilan. Meir Bar Ilan. Meir Bar Ilan has Chosh V'Yichos. His father is a Nitziv. The Nitziv married the daughter of I believe the Aruch HaShulchan. Excuse me. What? I think the Nitziv is the son-in-law of the Aruch HaShulchan. So Reb Meir Bar Ilan is the son of the Nitziv and the grandson of the Aruch HaShulchan. So listen to this question. So he came to somebody by the name of Rabbi Raphael Shapiro, one of the great Gedolim in Volozhin, who excelled in the midah of shtika. He was a very silent person. And Rabbi Raphael Shapiro would say, isn't it good to be silent? If talking you're not going to convince anybody of anything anyway, so you might as well be silent. So he says, listen to the silence of Rabbi Raphael Shapiro. It wasn't just his character trait, this was his shita. He would look above, he would look below, and then he wouldn't say anything. So one time, after midnight, I asked him, Rebbe, what's the job of a Rav? Obviously, he has to learn. So he said, listen. I asked Reb Chaim Soloveitchik. He says the job of the Rav is he has to oversee all the Inyanei Ha'ir, the Tzedakah, the Iskei HaKahal, the Talmud Torah. He has to paskin Shailas. That's supposedly what Reb Chaim Soloveitchik said. My grandfather, Aruch HaShulchan, he says a Rav has to be a poisek. Right? Like the Pasuk says, he called Davar HaKashi Yaviu I love. But the Tzarchei Ha'ir, leave that to, Askanim. But I'm asking you, Reb Rafa, what do you say? What's the job of a Rav? So he would say, And that was the answer. That was his shita. His shita is you have to know when to be quiet. That's the version of the story in the sort of the book written by Meir Bar Ilan himself. In the famous biography of Rav Soloveitchik, written by Rav Aaron Rakefet, he brings down, this is how Rav Soloveitchik said the story, that Meir Berlin once told me, he says, that he asked his grandfather, Rabbi Michael Epstein, the author of the Aruch HaShulchan, what's the role of a rabbi? He said, to paskin. And then Rabbi Meir Berlin asked his grandfather, asked my grandfather, Soloveitchik says, Reb Chaim. And Reb Chaim said, paskin Shailas, you could go to a dayan. The main job of the Rav is to help the needy, to protect the persecuted, to defend the widows, to sustain the orphans. Meaning, Gemilas Chasadim. Now, if you know Reb Chaim, everybody knows Reb Chaim completely revolutionized the system of learning in the yeshivas. Reb Chaim's approach to a sugya and to the Rambam was innovative, revolutionary. Reb Chaim, the briskers say, was almost like a rishon. He changed the way they learned the Olam HaYeshivas. To the point where I heard recently that Rav Moshe Shapiro said, people say brisk, I don't know what's going on over there, brisk. Rav Moshe Shapiro said, anyone who's mafakpek on the derech of brisk is a kaifer b'Torah. That the Reb Chaim and Beis Halevi and the Brisker Rav, they were the matike hashmua of the approach to learning. Okay, in any event, but if you want to know what Reb Chaim's most outstanding quality was, is that his doors were literally never closed. His doors were, people in Europe, people would have children, and Nebuch, they couldn't take care of them. They would leave it at Reb Chaim's doorstep, and they would live in Reb Chaim's house. Reb Chaim did not sleep in his bed. His house was like Rishus Haradim Doiraisa. That was his. To the point, look what it says here. The truth is that the acts of Reb Chaim in these areas were fantastic. He adopted mamzerim, provided for them, sent them to Cheder. There was a bundist. He helped this bundist on Yom Kippur. He saved his life. And the most important thing written on Reb Chaim's tombstone was he's Rav HaChesed. You ever hear the expression Rav Chesed Be'emes? You want to know what a Rav is? There's only one pasuk in the Torah that says Rav. Rav Chesed. That's what a Rav is. Gemilas Chasadim. So, I was very taken by this line. The most important attribute inscribed on his tombstone. It says this on his tombstone. So last night about 11 o'clock, I'm thinking to myself, that's what it says on Reb Chaim's tombstone? Rav HaChesed? I never heard this term. So I was trying to do some research, and I found in a sefer about Hespedim that in fact, Reb Chaim Ibrisk, they say about him that a Rav is not someone who answers shilos. A Rav is someone who does chesed. On the Matseva Reb Chaim, it says Rav HaChesed, the rabbi of chesed. That's what a rabbi is. So I was naturally very intrigued by this, and I said, let me see for myself. Is it taka? That's what it says on his kever? Because I did see in another sefer that the only thing that it says on his kever is Rav HaChesed. So I called up my friend Moshe Morgenstern, who he sends out to me every week, the yard sites of the week, sometimes with pictures of the kever. And I said, I want to see for myself, what does it say on Reb Chaim's kever? So he sent me a picture, and all it said was, Hagoin HaChassid Ha'amiti Rabbi Shal Kol Yisrael, who created a new path in learning, and Havanas HaTorah LaHamida is Hamida Tamim Harbe. It doesn't say anywhere Rav HaChesed. So I said, look, I already found in two Sfarim that it says on Chaim Brisker's kever, Rav HaChesed. So Rav Moshe found for me the full picture. The first picture had the first line cut off. So I have for you the second picture of Rav Chaim's kever. I'm going to read to you the top line because it's very difficult to read. It says, Rabbeinu Hagadol Rav HaChesed Sar HaTorah. The first title on his kever is Rav HaChesed. Rav HaChesed. Okay, so it's not the only thing that it says on his kever, but it's the first thing. So if you want to know what a Rav is, according to Reb Chaim, it's Baal Chesed. So I heard a shiur from Rabbi Yerucham Ocean. He was being maspid a certain Rav in Muncie, Rabbi Berg, and Rabbi Yerucham also said over this story of, the question, what is a Rav? Is a Rav someone who teaches Lamdas, Paskin Shailas, does Chesed? And Rabbi Yerucham gave his own interpretation that in his opinion, what is the main job of a Rav? Look at number 8, based on Rav Mishnas, Rav Aaron, and Rav Aaron Cutler. The Medrash says, Chaviv Moshe mi Noach. Moshe was more beloved than Noach. Noach, he was called first an Ish Tzaddik, but in the end he's called an Ish Adama. Moshe first is called an Ish Mitzri, and then he's called Ish Elokim. And that's the Chavivus of Moshe. What's the Chavivus of Moshe, says Reb Aaron? Shahaya b'matzav shel aliyah, that he was in a state of ascent. That after he's called an Ish Mitzri, and you should know when he was called an Ish Mitzri, he was already a Navi, he was already in a high level of Nevuah, he was already on the highest level of Nevuah. And after all the Moira Gal Yad Chazaka and the Torah was given to him, he was always Amel, Amel, Amel. Meaning the responsibility of a Yid and the responsibility of life is Aliyah Bilti Poisekas. Non-stop ascent, non-stop going up. Endless climbing. And Rav Aaron writes elsewhere, not just endless climbing, but endless running up. Not just, krechtzing up. Running up. And right? Ritzoy, Roitzo V'shav, right? Running up, up. That was the Galus of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that is the most important responsibility in life. And therefore, Rabbi Yerucham said, in his opinion, the tafkid of the Rav is to facilitate growth in the people, in Limud Torah primarily, in Yirah Shamayim, in Midos Tovos, and in his opinion, that is the main job of a Rav. But he did say, and that the Chafetz Chaim said clearly, and he heard this from Shneur Cutler, that's what's the main tafkid of a Rav, and I'm going to read to you first in Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. I can tell you what the Chafetz Chaim said, and that is, look at number 9, Mechayvasai shal Rav lahachin es Shiurav heitev. The obligation of the Rav is to prepare good Shiurim. Why? He says, this is from the Sefer Mesois Tevel in Beshalach on page Kuf Lamed Hey. These are stories about Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. He says, Siper Rabba Shal Or Yehuda Rav Tzion Kohen. Oideni Misragesh. I'm still moved from two encounters I had with Maran Ma'or Yisrael with the Rabbi Ovadia, and Rabbi Ovadia would constantly reiterate one point. Mesimasai HaMerkazah Shal Rav Yarbatzas HaTorah. The central obligation on the Rav is Harbatzas Torah. Not officiating, not social director, giving Shiurim. So too, the Rav Ovadia told me that the Rav has to prepare his Shiurim very well. And says Rabbi Ovadia, by the way, Rabbi Ovadia once said, how could I spend time learning the Ktsois, this lumdus, that lumdus? I could have learned another Beis Yosef in that time. So Rav Ovadia held the Ikar learning is halacha l'maisa and writing Shaus Tshuvas. But when Rav Ovadia was a Rav, he didn't write any Tshuvas. Rav Ovadia, when he was chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, for 5 years didn't write any Tshuvas. What did he do all day? Prepared Shiurim. And at what rate? For every hour, you need to prepare at least 3 hours. That's what Rav Ovadia said. For every hour of Shiur, you have to prepare at least 3 hours. And Rabbi Rocham said, they hear from Shneur Kotler, that the Chavetz Chaim said, the Iker job of the Rav is Harbatzas Torah. Okay, so here we get a little bit of a interesting job description. I'll end off with one vart. Beautiful vart, I'll never forget this. This doesn't come from a Rav, but a very interesting Dvar Torah. Nevertheless, so there was somebody in the neighborhood, the big philanthropist, Mr. Cooperman. You remember Mr. Cooperman? He's a Holocaust survivor. Moshe David Cooperman. He put up Shiva Ktana of Queens. He put up, I think, Beis Fega in Lakewood. Anyway, so he said the following vart. How do you know what type of Rebbe should you try to have? What should your Rebbe be? In other words, who should you pursue? So he said like this. It says in Chagiga Tezvav Amvez, Amar Rabbi Rav Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mai Dichsev, Ki Sifsei Kohen Yishmor Das. The lips of the Kohen will preserve knowledge. The Torah Yevakshu Mipihu, Ki Malach Hashem Tzvakoisu. Im Doime Harav LaMalach Hashem Tzvakois. If your Rebbe is like an angel, Yevakshu Torah Mipihu. Ve'im Lav, but if he's not, Al Yevakshu Torah Mipihu, then go somewhere else. So says Rav Moshe David Cooperman, Zchar L'Bracha, said, what does that mean if your Rebbe is like an angel? Then you should learn from him. So he says there are 3 things we know about an angel. What do we know about it? The first thing we know is in Yecheskel, Aleph Zayin says, V'ragleim regel yishara. They're straight. So the first thing about the Rebbe is to be ishamas. It has to be straight. No mises. No, twisty, slippery, straight. A yes is a yes and a no is a no. And that's without any shtick. That's the first thing we know about the Malach. Number 2, he said, Dumus Pnei and Pnei Adam. They look like a man. That says about a Malach. So the second thing, the Rebbe has to be down to earth. If he's up in the Shamayim, so he doesn't know, yes and no, but Shamayim out, also Ala Arts Mitachas. Dumus Pnei and Pnei Adam. And this is very important. The last thing is, what else do we know about a Malach? They have 6 wings. V'shtayim yichase panav, uv'shtayim yichase raglav, uv'shtayim yoifeif. With 2 they cover their face, with 2 they cover the legs, and with 2 they fly. Meaning, they're only making noise with 2 out of their 6 wings. With the other 4 out of the 6 wings, they're covering themselves over. Meaning, they don't let on all their ammunition. They have a lot more ammunition, but they only let on a little bit. Meaning, sanua. Not everything they know or do is anybody else's business. So he would say, and he was talking about who he learned from. Okay, but be it as may, that's what they said. Rabbi Savitsky said it at his levaya, that he would go learn from a certain person, and he said, that person met the criteria over here. One of the leading Talmidei Chachamim today. So anyway, this is some of the interesting things about Rabbanos, and what's the role of the chief rabbi? The role of the chief rabbi is well beyond the scope of today's shir. And on that note, the assistant rabbi's role is to make the rabbi nervous. Okay, Rabbi, say have a great day. Shkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.